So let's set the scene. It's just a few days after the promise of the new year, back in early 2002.
Right. And a seemingly quiet night in a master's bedroom in Cebu City is about to be, well, completely shattered.
We know exactly how it started. A sound, a loud, desperate scream for help.
And right after that scream, a heavy, sickening bang. The events that followed are just deeply disturbing.
A witness who was very close to the scene later recalled seeing two men carrying something.
Something dark, heavy. It was a large black garbage bag, and it was wrapped meticulously, almost obsessively, with packing tape.
They loaded that dark package into the trunk of a red Toyota Corolla and then they sped away.
And the contents of that bag.
The strangled and beaten body of 27-year-old Alona Ecleo, a medical student just months away from graduation.
And one of the men carrying her was her own husband, Ruben Ecleo Jr.
Who was not just anyone.
No. He was the supreme master of a religious group with, they say, 1 million followers, and a key member of one of the Philippines' most powerful political dynasties.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into the Ecleo case. This story is just a masterclass in how power, politics, and religious devotion can completely derail the legal process.
Our mission today is complex. We have to go beyond the crime itself. We are going to unpack the sheer, overwhelming role of political and religious influence in delaying justice for nearly 2 decades.
And we'll look at the critical evidence that just completely contradicted Ecleo's defense. You are about to see, through the details of this manhunt, what happens when the rule of law runs headfirst into a structure of absolute, almost sovereign power.
Okay, so let's start by understanding the dynamics between the two main players.
Alona Bacolod. She was highly ambitious, studying medicine at Southwestern University in Cebu City.
And she was so close, expected to graduate in March of 2002. She'd married Ruben Ecleo Jr. back in 1996.
Yeah, she was 21 and he was 36.
Initially, their marriage seemed like this blend of traditional power and, modern ambition. But it soured quickly.
And the conflict, from what we know from court testimony, wasn't just simple marital problems.
No, not at all. It apparently stemmed directly from Ruben's alleged heavy addiction to illegal drugs, specifically crystal meth.
And the source material really highlights how intimate and destructive this all was. Alona's own brother, Jose Bill, he testified that he himself was told to buy crystal meth for Ruben.
That's incredible. So the fights became constant because Alona was demanding that her powerful husband get help, go to rehab.
A demand he was reportedly refusing to meet. This really sets the stage, doesn't it? A volatile domestic situation colliding with a man just used to absolute control.
And that control extended far beyond his home. The Ecleo family. I mean, they weren't just wealthy.
No, they're a political institution, dominating the Dinagat Islands right off the northern tip of Mindanao.
Exactly. His father, Ruben Sr., he'd been mayor for over 20 years. His mother, Glenda, served as a congresswoman, then later governor. And Ruben Jr. had been a mayor and a congressman himself.
That is a serious political machine. But what makes this case so unique is how that political power was fused with this huge religious empire.
Precisely. When Ruben Sr., the founder of the Philippine Benevolent Missionaries Association, the PBMA, passed away, Ruben Jr. became the supreme master.
And this group, the PBMA, reportedly commanded loyalty from 1 million followers.
1 million. Think about that scale. Your political base is also your religious flock. This influence translated into a literal physical stronghold.
The PBMA headquarters, their mansion, stood like a medieval castle on a high hill in Dinagat Islands.
And the visual here is so important for you to understand. This wasn't just a big house. It was a compound surrounded by loyal followers who lived on the island.
So the family basically held sovereign control.
Which meant, for the government, entering that compound wasn't like serving a warrant. It was more like planning a military operation.
Okay, let's go to the night the violence culminated. January 5, 2002, Alona and Ruben were living in Forest Hills, Cebu City.
And her brother, Joseph, was there. His testimony became the absolute cornerstone of the prosecution's case.
He heard those loud noises, the screams for help, coming from the master's bedroom around 9:30 p.m.
And Josevil's account details what happened right after. He went out to the living room and saw Ruben drenched in sweat, eyes bloodshot, visibly agitated.
Then later, he sees Ruben and his bodyguard, a man named Ruben Ecleo, struggling to drag that black garbage bag, wrapped in tape, and loaded into the car.
The crime was witnessed by a close family member,
who also gave crucial context about the motive. He confirmed that Ruben had asked him to buy crystal meth just the day before and that he saw Ruben using drugs.
So you have the drug abuse, the fight over rehab, the violence, the sound of the bang, and then the immediate disposal of the body. It's an incredibly clear narrative.
But Ruben offered a counter-narrative that it defies belief.
His defense was simple. Alona left the house around 7 p.m. that night and just never came back.
And his alibi for the next 3 days was even more questionable. He claimed he was attending consecutive overnight PBMA parties in different cities,
Making him completely unreachable and
unable to have committed the crime. Wait a minute. The court had this testimony that his priority was a series of overnight parties while his wife was supposedly missing.
Exactly. Why was this even plausible? It just underscores the sheer force of his political and spiritual protection. He likely believed his influence would make the court overlook how weak it was.
But the physical evidence just didn't allow that.
No. 3 days later, on January 8th, the decomposing body was found far away in Dalaget, Cebu, dumped on a cliff beside the highway, still sealed in that garbage bag.
The identification was just heartbreakingly specific. Her siblings identified her by the jewelry she was wearing during New Year's just a few days before. A necklace, earrings, a bracelet.
It just humanizes the tragedy. And the forensic facts were absolutely damning to his story.
The autopsy found that Alona was severely beaten before she was strangled.
Which suggests a sustained, brutal assault, not a spontaneous argument. This totally contradicts the narrative of her just walking out the door.
On top of that, police found bloodstains in the master's bedroom, the bathroom, and critically in Alona's red car, which her siblings turned over.
The body was physically removed from the house, put in the car, and driven to that remote dump site.
And that brings us to a key piece of independent evidence.
A completely unrelated witness, Gloria Navaja. She came forward. She testified she was driving along that same highway in Dalaget around midnight on January 5th.
The very night of the killing.
And she saw Ruben Jr. and a red car parked near the dumping site. She saw him standing right next to a black garbage bag wrapped in tape.
And she recognized him instantly as the supreme master of the PBMA.
That is the moment the religious figure collides with the common criminal. The court ultimately highlighted these inconsistencies. Why, if your wife is missing, would you spend 3 consecutive nights at parties?
Right, and they noted his total failure to produce phone logs to support his claim he was calling her. The whole alibi was just absurd.
The intimate nature of the crime also dictated the charge. Parricide.
Which is important. Parricide isn't just murder, it's the killing of a spouse, parent, or child. The state was emphasizing the breach of trust.
So, on April 24, 2002, Ruben was formally charged. The legal process had begun.
But serving the arrest warrant was a whole other story.
Indeed. The first attempts by local police failed because the Ecleo mansion in Dinagat was completely surrounded by thousands of loyal PBMA members.
A human shield.
Exactly. This wasn't civil disobedience. This was a political and religious structure physically repelling the state.
It escalated really to a confrontation between the central government and the Ecleo's private army. On June 18, 2002, the government mobilized 200 soldiers and police officers.
200, an almost military deployment just to serve one arrest warrant.
And the opposition was the armed PBMA security team, known as the White Eagles.
They were distinct, wearing white clothes, red headbands. And what's fascinating is the ideology here. They genuinely believed that rings given to them by the Supreme Master would make them bulletproof.
And if they died protecting him, they were promised eternal happiness.
How does a belief system translate into a military blockade against the state? It shows Ecleo was wielding both spiritual and political power to create this barrier.
Negotiations failed completely. A shot was fired from the PBMA side, and it triggered a brutal 3-hour gun battle.
The casualties were immense. 1 policeman and 16 PBMA members were dead.
And among those killed was Jerivan Padero,
the bodyguard who helped carry Alona's body.
Ruben finally surrendered the next morning, June 19th. But the sheer price of seeking justice in this case, it only continued to compound.
Because on that exact same day Ruben surrendered, the Bacolod massacre happened.
That's right. While Ruben was being processed, a PBMA gunman entered Alona's family home in Mandaue City and systematically killed her parents and 2 of her siblings.
The police saw this as a clear warning, a calculated act of terror designed to stop any remaining family from testifying.
So the legal process itself was being systematically dismantled by fear, and the violence didn't stop there.
No. On October 11, 2004, the private prosecutor handling both the parricide case and the massacre case, Arba Stank Young Ko, was assassinated.
And the suspect arrested. A PBMA member, again.
So you have the victim, her family massacred, and the lead prosecutor assassinated, all linked back to the followers of the accused.
Yet 7 months before the prosecutor was killed, the court had actually allowed Ruben to post a $1 million bail. He was released.
That bail decision, amid all this escalating violence, it just raises so many questions about the influence being applied behind the scenes.
And this legal manipulation kept happening over almost 10 years. 6 different judges either inhibited themselves or just flat out refused to handle the case.
6 different judges. What does that tell you about the perceived reach of the Ecleo influence, even inside the courts? It speaks to that unseen hand the final judge later mentioned.
It suggests the legal establishment itself understood the risk.
The Ecleo clan could apply political pressure, spiritual loyalty, and, as we've seen, lethal violence. And despite all this, Ruben Ecleo successfully ran for and won a seat as congressman of Dinagat Islands in 2010.
It's an incredible display of defiance. But we have to remember, the parricide conviction wasn't even his first fall from grace.
That's a crucial detail. Many people forget that back in 2006, the Sandigan Bayan, the anti-graft court, had already found him guilty of graft.
For an anomalous project from his time as mayor in the 90s, he was sentenced to 31 years imprisonment for that.
So he was already a convicted grafter, currently a congressman, and still awaiting judgment for the murder of his wife.
Justice for Alona, however, finally arrived on April 13, 2012. Under the courageous leadership of Judge Soliver Paris, Ruben Ecleo was found guilty of parricide.
Sentenced to life imprisonment and ordered to pay $25.6 million in damages.
It was a clear, hard-fought legal victory, but it was almost entirely symbolic at first.
Because by the time the verdict was delivered in 2012, Ruben had already been in hiding for a year. He jumped bail in 2011.
He became the country's #1 most wanted fugitive. A €1 million reward was issued.
And the manhunt went on for years. 14 years after that initial graft conviction, the search finally ended on July 30, 2020.
That is an astonishing amount of time for a high-profile fugitive to evade capture.
Law enforcement got a tip he was hiding way up north in Angeles City, Pampanga, using the alias Manuel Rebel.
The details of the arrest are almost an anticlimax, aren't they? He was intercepted at age 60 on his way to a golf course.
The once powerful Supreme Master was balding, had missing teeth, difficulty hearing.
He reportedly told the police he was just tired of hiding. The chase was over. The structure that protected him for so long had finally crumbled.
And the final chapter just underscores the systemic delays. Ruben Ecleo died less than a year after his arrest in May 2021 from cardiopulmonary arrest.
When you map out the timeline, the convicted murderer spent more years free and on the run than he ever spent in prison for either conviction.
14 years.
Judge Paras's summary, when he delivered that verdict in 2012, is really the ultimate takeaway here. He noted the profound loss required to get the verdict. The witnesses, the destruction of the Bacolod family, the prosecutor's assassination, lost documents, the 6 inhibited judges.
He wasn't just listing facts. He was cataloging the cost of influence. He specifically said it seemed there was an unseen hand manipulating the case.
A power so great it could interfere with every step of the judicial process.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for you, the listener, this case is such a powerful, sobering illustration of the friction between extreme wealth, unchecked influence, and the rule of law.
The law eventually prevailed in court, but it required years of violence and murder and intimidation just to get there.
It forces us to ask, what does justice even mean when the process is so fundamentally compromised that people have to risk their lives just to testify?
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. Ruben Ecleo was convicted of graft in 2006, successfully won a congressional seat in 2010, yet was only finally arrested in 2020. Given this timeline, how do structures of extreme influence, a powerful political clan backed by a million-strong religious group, manage to create parallel power systems that fundamentally challenge the efficacy and timeline of a nation's legal and judicial processes for decades on end?